Good afternoon. Welcome, welcome. As you begin to settle, welcome. Good afternoon. We are just going to be starting officially in a few seconds. We're just letting all of our colleagues into the virtual space. And I think that we are all set for now until we have some more colleagues joining us as well. So good afternoon. If I could please have the PowerPoint app. Greg, thank you. Let me have the opportunity to welcome all of you to the Connecticut School Discipline Collaborative Meeting scheduled for today, March 24th. And our time together will be from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. For those of you who are new to the space, my name is Ingrid Kennedy, Executive Director with the State Education Resource Center. It is my pleasure to be the facilitator, have been a pleasure to be the facilitator of the group since the inception of the group back in 2018. So at this time, I would like to have the opportunity to just welcome you again. And as we begin to get our colleagues into the space so that we're just going to wait just a few more seconds so that we make sure that they do not miss any of the information that we have prepared for you today. Okay, thank you. If we can go to the next slide, Greg. Thank you. By now, we all are either Zoom experts, WebEx experts, Google experts, every type of virtual platform there is out there, we are probably all have been introduced to them. We just gonna quickly just remind all of us today that in order to be able to engage into the interactive aspects of our meeting, we are asking you to use the icons provided by Zoom and to also use to bring your perspective into the space to use the hand raise feature of the Zoom platform. Today's session is going to be incredibly interactive. You are going to be receiving a lot of information, and at the same time, you are going to be sharing a lot of information. So we have designed in collaboration with our partners at the State Department of Education. We all have collaborated and designed an interactive session for you. So we will be asking you for your perspectives as we have done in the past. So at this time, as a role as a facilitator, you all know that I need to make sure that I keep time. And every once in a while, I'm just going to have to jump into the conversation instead. We're going to have to move on to the next topic. So at this time, I would like to ask my colleague, John Frassinelli, Division Director from School Health, Nutrition, Family Service, and Adult Education from the department, to join us to welcome you all and to guide us through the day today. John?
Thank you, Ingrid. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you all here as well as our partners at CERC. We have a full agenda today. We appreciate your spending some time with us this afternoon. So let's move right along to the next slide, please. So our agenda today, we will hear from our Commissioner of Education updates. We talk a lot about the Commissioner's vision, and she'll have the opportunity to speak to us all around that work. We'll talk about the work that's happening around school discipline, what we're referring to as meeting the moment, given the impact of COVID and what we're doing. We have, many of you have been working with us on looking at how we can address the issues of school discipline. We'll go back to a theme of ours, which is looking at the history of school discipline and look at the history of public education in Connecticut. We'll go back to that to ground us in the work that we're doing, and then that will wrap us up for the session. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the overarching goal of our time together is to advise the Commissioner and the State Board of Education regarding school discipline work that's happening in schools. Again, many of you are working closely with us on that, and we certainly appreciate that. And then our collective outcome is to certainly reduce the overall and disproportionate use of exclusionary discipline in schools. Next slide, please. Meeting objectives for today are to look at current trends in school discipline. We had a panel discussion in November, and we will revisit some of the conversations that happened then. And then we want to hear from you around the work that's happening and how we can work together to address school discipline in schools. We will also spend some time sharing the work that's been happening on our level with our state level partners as well. So we'll have an opportunity for that. Next slide, please. And so it's my pleasure to introduce the Commissioner of the Department of Education, Commissioner Shirley Russell Tucker. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to our members of our School Discipline Collaborative. Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, Cirque, all the work you've done. And thank you for reminding us that we started on this journey together in 2018. And our mission and vision for the collaborative has not changed, as you've heard. It really is about the commissioner and our state board and our department in general can hear from all of you out there in the field to inform the work that we're doing. We've had some deliverables that we've worked on together as a group, but really thrilled to be here today. So thank you. On our next slide, one that you have seen before, but also wanted to ground the work, especially that we're doing about social emotional mental health of students and school staff. I've shared with you in the past $1.7 billion allocated to Connecticut in our federal relief funding. And we set out in our state, really, really proud of what we've done here, really to say there are state level investment priorities that we're holding ourselves to, and that we're also holding our districts to really do their planning and investments around. Learning acceleration, and so far for the ARP ESSA, which is the American Rescue Plan, kind of the last big bucket of funds that we received in the state, that when we take a look at that, no, actually combined, so the ESSA funding in general, learning acceleration, academic renewal, the planned investments in districts across all districts, that's the biggest piece of the investment that we're seeing, over $700 million there. Of course, social emotional mental health supports, which we'll come back to. The investments that we're seeing, the planned investments are over $183 million in that area. Strategic use of technology, I continue to address the digital divide, over $147 million there. We thought it was really important that we're doing family and community connections, so critical for improving student outcomes, over 70 million there invested. And finally, building safe and healthy schools. We see over 255 million there, and specifically over 165 million of that addressing air quality supports for changes for schools and school buildings. So really wanted to start there with you to level set. On the next slide, you'll see, you've probably also seen what we're saying is interconnected approach. And so we have those funding priorities, but there are other goals and priority areas that we're working on, and they truly are not isolated. They are interconnected. We recognize the need to have quality curriculum for engagement and for learning, and that is work that is underway. We recognize that students need to be certainly engaged in learning. We know that's a part of it. We know how critical attendance is. Attendance is a precursor to engagement, and engagement is a precursor to learning. So that is a part of that. Having quality curriculum is there and critically important. I'll skip over to the minority educator recruitment and retention program that we're working on. And I'm going to ask Maddie to maybe drop in the chat. We just did an infographic, which are the 11 ways that the department is leading educator recruitment and diversification efforts. We're really pleased in this space as well. There's still a whole lot of work to be done, but it is work that folks are doing every day. And why is that important? We need diverse educators in our school buildings, in front of our students. It connects with engagement and so much more when we talk about equity and access. So it is an interconnected approach as well. I've spoken about engaging families and communities, critically important. And also the issue of literacy, so fundamental and critical when we talk about issues around social justice. When we think about issues of equity, the issue of literacy is really critically important. And we have a major initiative here that is happening, which you will soon, the teaser, you will soon learn more about that because again, we're working really very hard in that particular area. And I go back to, data-driven policy making. And again, so pleased that we're really prioritize being data-driven, data-supported, data-informed in all the efforts that we're doing. You've probably heard us speak about our Connecticut COVID-19 Education Research Collaborative that we call CSERC, which is a groundbreaking, first of its kind research collaborative of public and private universities across Connecticut, working together to make sure that we're evaluating our investments so we know what works. And just so you are aware, just maybe a couple weeks ago, the Edu Recovery Hub, which is a project of the Collaborative for Student Success, in partnership with the researchers at Georgetown University, so separate from us, independent from us, did an analysis and published a brief. And the title says, Expert Review Panel says Connecticut's strategy for tracking and reporting how COVID funds are spent is one to watch. And here's why. And so we're really pleased again, we are working together here in the state agency, all our partners, all of you, in the efforts that we're making, which is really so critically important. So wanted to share that with you as well. On the next slide, I'll come back to the behavioral health that we're supporting. And yes, you've heard about the Commissioner's big audacious goal, really to ensure that all school buildings in our state have the resources they need to provide comprehensive behavioral health support to students and staff. And it's great to have a goal, but at some point you need to start implementing and executing on that goal. And I'm pleased to share with you that we started to do that by way of the behavioral health pilot that is currently underway in 6 of our districts, and 6 because we're really trying to start out small, but they're just diverse districts to help us to create a scalable and sustainable system of coordinated care. It is not, as you know, one size fits all. So we're doing that. And so the goals of this pilot are to supplement the existing efforts at schools and at the school district level, to work with our districts and schools to identify where the gaps are and determine specific priorities, to suggest appropriate interventions and to connect with appropriate providers, to identify new ways to increase staff and service provision and create new opportunities for professional learning, multi-tier system of support in place. And so this is a pilot, right, that we're working on, but it will inform us as we go forward how to scale, what is it that we need to invest in to make sure that this becomes a reality across all of our school buildings and all of school districts across the state. And we're certainly continuing to provide social emotional learning supports to districts, including the assessment tool. And we've done the 7 ways that the department is leading on social emotional learning. And in a day or two, you'll see the 16 ways that we're supporting social emotional learning and mental health and behavioral health in our school districts. So really pleased, we've heard from you, and really want to say, as you've heard some of this, and I'm sure as you go through the rest of our meeting, to continue to share with us what we can be doing and also what it is that you can do and leverage in your sphere of influence from where you are, because we recognize this is what I call all hands on deck for all to support all our students, all our staff, and certainly supporting families. We know they're interconnected. It is critical for this work to be done in tandem. So thank you for allowing me just to share some of that. I'll be around. I know John is going to go next to talk about the blueprint for Meeting the Moment and some more details in terms of where we are, but we can answer any questions that you have. And I really look forward to hearing more from you to figure out how we can continue to work together so we can achieve the greatest impact for our students in our state. With that, thank you very much. I will move that forward to John, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Again, as I mentioned, Meeting the Moment, the moment is we recognize that we're hopefully coming out of COVID, but the impact of COVID has certainly been felt in our districts, among our families and among our students. And so we're recognizing the immediate needs for the work that has to happen to build upon the work that we've been doing over the last several years. It has certainly an increased sense of urgency. So the first bullet talks about we're scaling up our multi-tiered system of supports to work with districts to make sure that we're not only working on disciplinary issues, but looking at aligning our academic, our social emotional, and our behavioral supports so that we're wrapping services around the whole child. I would be remiss if I did not say that also includes school meals. A big part of what we're doing is nourishing our students' minds and bodies as well. So as many of you are aware, we've developed a tiered system of supports to look at districts' issues around disproportionality and the overall use of school discipline, making sure that we are maintaining a high touch with our districts in tiers 3 and 4, but also making sure that we're supporting universal supports for our tiers 1 and 2 throughout all of the schools in Connecticut. We continue to provide guidance, professional learning, coaching certainly with our partners at CERC around this work to support districts. And again, looking at disproportionality, we're convening communities of practice, which brings districts in to talk about best practices, to talk about challenges, and to be able to have a laser focus on disproportionality and identify the root causes of some of the use and perhaps overuse of exclusionary discipline. Next slide, please. So as many of you are aware, many of you have participated in, we've had a number of many very candid, very wonderful discussions with our partners around the pre-K to 2 population. I see that Adi Feinstein is on. I see Catherine Meyer, a number of other partners, Patrice McCarthy from CABE. The JJPOC, we've convened and had, again, some wonderful conversations about this work and to make sure that we're aligned with what's happening. We're building on that tiered structure, looking at being very intentional about pre-K to grade 2. We know that any use of exclusionary discipline in those populations is problematic. And so we're, again, looking at understanding children's emotional triggers, work that relates to understanding behavior so that we can provide support to schools and staff in schools around classroom management, around supports for students to support them to, again, reduce the use of discipline in this population. And of course, this wouldn't make sense if we did not partner with the Office of Early Childhood, who serves certainly primarily those grades as well. The pyramid model is one that expands, approach that focuses on the continuum of support for social emotional development as well in young children. We are, again, looking at the use of mobile crisis services. For those of you who are following the legislature, there is a lot of focus on the expansion of mobile crisis services in schools. We certainly support that. It's a great resource for districts, and we're looking at how we can actually get mobile crisis involved sooner. So, it's not just don't call 911, call 211 for mobile crisis. Like, how can we use the behavioral health and mobile crisis services to support students and families and children in schools before it escalates to a point where you've got to call for help. So, and then the ECCP project is a strengths-based. It's a mental health consultation program. They will actually send staff to the school to work directly with teachers and to work directly with students when there's crisis happening. So direct assistance for our districts. And as you can see, it's again, all hands on deck in work in this area. So next slide, please. I think at this point, I will turn it over back to Ingrid Kennedy, who's going to take us through the historical timeline. Ingrid.
Ingrid, before you jump in, as I always do in these meetings, I have a few things to add, but I really wanted to connect to, and John mentioned the issue of nutrition and meals and making sure meals are available for our students. That, I don't want us to miss out on the fact that we're also looking at somewhat of an explosion of childhood obesity, which is an issue, right? And we know the interrelatedness and impact, issues around bullying, issues about students not feeling comfortable to be in school in the space, so that, or are things acting out differently in school? So I'm using that thread to say why it's so important that all of these pieces and everything that we're working on are certainly all interconnected. So as we look at the issues of discipline, we also widen the lens to think about what are those antecedents, what are those issues we need to be thinking about? Yes, mental health, because that's connected there as well. But I don't want us to lose the fact that these are issues that we have to think about holistically, and it's not one versus the other, it's all of them together. So that is, as I keep looking at those numbers, that's a concern. And we talk about not being in school and not having physical activity and a lot of those kinds of things, or the stress eating, okay? We know what that means even for adults, but what that means for children and how that can cascade into a lot of other things that can be played out and demonstrated in school. And I just really wanted to make sure that we're thinking about those things as well. So while there's a lot of focus, as you know, even legislatively on behavioral and mental health supports, I keep saying physical health is also critically important. So I couldn't resist, John. I just had to build on that because that's so important.
Of course, thank you, Commissioner. And I will say, it's just, and not necessarily anecdotally, I can't tell you how many conversations our team have had with districts when we start to see, discipline happening mid-morning when kids start to act up, and we're like, okay, have you thought about providing breakfast? Because kids, who haven't had breakfast, who have been on a bus for a long time, who are hungry mid-morning, start to get fidgety in their seats. So again, there are so many opportunities here to address the whole child, to the Commissioner's point, and we are circling to make sure that we cover all of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you so much, John, for the wealth of information. And as you can see, regarding the theme of today's session together is the moment, meeting the moment. So before actually we move into the activity, I would like to open the space for any of you that might have a question, an inquiry, an observation that you would like to present to our colleagues at the department. So let me grab a couple of your perspectives at this time. Any questions you may have? Michelle?
Good
Thank you.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I wondered whether or not, and I didn't participate in the small group discussion that John was discussing around pre-K2 discipline, but this is a struggle and I'm a school attorney for those of you who may not know me. I represent school districts, and this is a real place of struggle right now, I think, for a lot of my clients. And I appreciate the suggestion to call mobile crisis, but there is a barrier there in the sense that it requires parental consent in order to obtain services. And unfortunately, the experience that we have had is that many of the same students who are the most dysregulated and the most in need of services also have family units that are extremely dysregulated and struggling in various ways, and they often will not consent to the provision of services through mobile crisis. That in combination with staffing shortages, inability to hire qualified staff, paraprofessional staff, et cetera, is putting a real strain on a lot of my clients. So I was just wondering whether there was any insight that you could give us into whether there's a thought process behind accessing mobile crisis, and whether or not is there any way, I guess, for us to obtain those services without the barrier of parental consent?
Michelle, thank you. Greg, could you pull the deck down for a moment so we can see everyone that, awesome, that's on the screen together. And Michelle, great to see you. And I know John may have, maybe some others on here may have some other thoughts as well, but I think this is the value of us having these conversations, right? Figuring out what's the emerging barriers or concerns. And John, I don't know if we've had those conversations. I mean, we've been working hand in glove with DCF as well. We brought in Commissioner Durantis into some of our meetings with superintendents. And so is this an area that you all have had conversation on? And is this something, Michelle, that together we can take on to figure out solutions?
Yeah, Michelle, it's a great point. Thank you, Commissioner. And I think a lot of the conversations we've been having is exactly that point, Michelle, is how do we reframe the use of mobile crisis services so that they're more responsive, quicker responses, but also how do we use them in different capacities to support students? The parent permission part, we'll certainly have that conversation with DCF to see if there's an opportunity to do that. I mean, one of the initiatives that we fund is the school-based diversion initiative, and what we see in that program is when they're in schools, we see, first of all, a reduction in 911 calls and reduction in school-based arrests. And the flip side of that is increased calls to emergency mobile crisis. But then over time, building capacity in the school districts, we actually see a decreased utilization of mobile crisis in favor of some of the school-based supports. There are a lot of additional things happening. The Commissioner mentioned that under the American Rescue Plan ESSER funds, districts are putting over $180 million in student support services, both in personnel and in training and in professional development. I saw Michelle Catucci on here from the Connecticut School Counselors Association. A lot of work is happening in that area as well. And again, I mentioned things that are pending in the legislature include grant funding to support both in school and out of school supports and training for districts, but also staffing. And again, that's one of the major reasons by the Commissioner's big audacious goal is what is that telling us, and how do we scale that up statewide to support those students. But appreciate it, Michelle. I will certainly have that conversation around the parental permission as a barrier to the students and families.
Thank you.
And if you have some thoughts, really about innovative solutions, we're all ears to take that back with our partners as well. And maybe that could be a topic that we talk about later in this meeting, or just one off. In all seriousness, that is the level of coordination that we're really working on across our state agency systems as well.
Yeah, well, just to cap that little piece of information, if you're wondering why there are calls to 911, it's because school districts know that 211 requires parental consent and 911 doesn't. So that's leading to an increase in 911 calls.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. So we have two other perspectives. So I'm going to bring those perspectives into the space, and then we go ahead and we will move forward with the plan aspect of the next aspect of the meeting. Andrew, and then Catherine.
Right, and I am not just responding to Michelle, although certainly elimination of parental consent would be a matter of substantial concern to us. But I think there are ways around this, perhaps. My concern is that there's such diversity among districts in whether they have multi-tiered systems of support. And it seems to me that a lot of these issues could be resolved at a lower level if there were comprehensive multi-tiered systems of support. What we've recommended is that the department create a matrix of what would a multi-tiered system of support would involve, have schools, not districts, schools self-assess themselves on that, and then come up with some basic minimum standard that we're going to want all schools to have, and go to the legislature at that point to say, this is what we need. These are the schools that need it, and here's what it's going to cost. I find that the efforts of the department, which are often outstanding, are either directed at alliance districts in a very big way, or are working with districts that are really doing a lot of great things, and the district and the department is supporting them. But there's a lot of districts in between that have really not very comprehensive systems that really haven't thought through a system of support. And that's something that I think we really ought to take steps to ensure that every school, not district, every school in the state has a comprehensive multi-tiered system of support that meets basic standards.
Hi, this is Kim. How's everyone today? I wanted to actually just respond to that question, but I also wanted to respond to the last question by adding that even if the parent does not give consent, we can still, or DCF can still come in and work with the classroom and the school, and enabling to provide one, resources, but two, also how to calm the situation for that particular child based on whatever trigger it is, or if it's escalating, what kind of techniques can we use to de-escalate that? So we can still contact 211 and they can still come into the building and supply that support without having parent permission. So I just wanted to have clarity on that. The other piece, I think, Andy, you're right on target. We really have to assess individual schools and where they are and where are they falling on that continuum. And then really actually looking at what their strengths, weaknesses are, where there are areas of improvement, and then really actually designing an action plan on how to improve those efforts and giving them the resources to be able to do that. Now, there's some other things that come into consideration when you think about that. Like, for example, how do we organize all the other initiatives that are happening and then pulling all these things together so that it makes sense to a district and building coherence? That's critical. And so I really do agree with you 100% that there is an assessment that can be done to look at individual schools, that can look at system-wide, district-wide situations. And we are actually working on that. So as you say that, we are doing that work. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Kim, for that clarification. Thank you for the perspective. Catherine?
Hi, everyone. Lower this hand before I forget. Okay. Thank you, Michelle, for that perspective, because I think we need to keep getting these specific pieces of information to understand why things are happening or not happening. And I think we completely agree that I don't think anyone disagrees with the fact that young children are showing more intense, acute behaviors, right? I mean, I think everyone agrees with that. The kind of perspective I've heard from families, and this might be a disconnect in understanding how the service works, but what I've heard from families is that they've sometimes withheld consent to do the ongoing service treatment because the family already has a provider. And so not withholding consent for that original visit, and maybe that's a way that we can at least parse that out a little bit. Of course, if you can't find the family, that's a different situation. But I know we just need to make sure that schools also understand that there's the two different kinds of levels of consent there available. And I also hear from families like it's kind of more of the same. So there's going to be a lot of kids who are unfortunately the frequent flyers who are exhibiting different behaviors and feeling like we're not changing the environment or we're not changing the other variables. So like, what's this person going to do coming into it? But I do agree that we need to make sure that families understand that schools are calling that number because they're saying they need help and they don't have, they don't have what they need at their fingertips to make the situation better. And, I would definitely support kind of ongoing campaign to teach families more about what the service is.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. So one of the things that I want to highlight, and going back to the presentation that the commissioner made regarding the interconnected approach, These conversations, the perspectives that have been presented so far are so anchor in engaging families and communities. When our families understand what services are available, what those services mean, the resources that are at their fingertips, especially when we're talking about the racial diversity and ethnic diversity, linguistic diversity that exists within our families. So I think it just highlights the importance for us as we're thinking about, as members of the collaborative, begin to think and formulate those innovative ways in which we ensure that our families, all of our families, have access to the information and what that information means for them. Because we can go into engage into a great large conversation regarding the cultural perspectives and the cultural awareness regarding how do we access information, when do we access the information, and what does it mean to access that information. So I'm going to just bring that to the essence of the engagement in family and communities as part of this interconnected systems of support to address the moment, So with that said, we have the next section of our time together is about you and your perspective and thinking about addressing the moment. So for many of you that had participated from the very beginning of the collaborative 2018, would you mind just by an emoji showing to us, raise your hand if you have been a member of the collaborative since 2018. So let's go into that emoji action. Let's see. Fantastic. Okay, I have 6, 7, 8. Wow, okay. 9, ready? Okay, fantastic, thank you. I see 10, 11, 12. All right, 2018, October 31st, 2018. 14, okay. Fantastic, thank you so much, thank you so much. So as you can see, we have a lot of institutional knowledge right now in this space, meaning about how we have been functioning as a collaborative. At the same time, we have some new members that have joined us through the years, 2018, 2022. One of the amazing things about this collaborative, and those of you who are just joining us or have joined us the year subsequent to 2018, has been the level of engagement and courageous discourse that we have engaged as a collaborative, beginning in person and then now into this virtual space. And we have continued to do that with the goal of advising and providing information to the State Department of Education and our commissioners of education. And we have been incredibly fortunate that our current commissioner of education has been a member of this collaborative for the very beginning. So the history is also there, relevant to the engagement. And one of the things that we want to bring to your remembrance actually is, for those of you who participated when we introduced you to this historical timeline of education. And this historical timeline went from the 17th century, 1600s, to the 21st century, really pinpointing those things that have taken place in education through the years. And we were in the Lyceum, if I remember correctly, and you were able to walk through this and experience the timeline. And then we engaged in this amazing conversation with with a panelist really talking about what this timeline meant in history and how education has served to actually propel history, change history, make history. So for the purpose of what we want to do today, I want us to anchor your reflection is specifically on 2 key points. One, last time that we were together was November 18, 2021. That was our last meeting. We meet quarterly, November 18. We had that day a group of leaders, practitioners from our school districts who share with us their current reality. the challenges, the things that they are experiencing specifically about school discipline. We discussed that day, and I'm doing a little summary for those of you who were not present that day, of how they experienced firsthand the changes that are occurring in education as we're experiencing historical moments in education. How the virtual spaces, how social media, how all these things have created a completely different set of needs, demands, and awareness that they must have in order to be able to serve the students, their teachers, their families, and the community. History has told us that there's moments in history that mark those moments in which we say it's time to shift. Something's going to change. Something's going to happen. And that generally happens either by centuries, decades. The reality for all of us that we have experienced multiple moments, changes within a couple of years. Within a couple of years. So what we would like you to do a personal reflection first is about position yourself in 2019. I'm going to ask my colleague, Greg, if we can put the PowerPoint up, please. And if we can set it, we can move it 2 slides, if you can move it forward, right there. What it was, we want you to position yourselves in 2019. We can go one back, Greg, please. Thank you. 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. We need you to reflect on what are some of those moments in history from your perspective that have changed education. Those moments that are propelling, giving us a different critical moment or interrogation that we must pause in order to be able to assess how we're defining the 21st century. These last 4 years have created a lot. Social, emotional, racially, culturally, ethnically. We want to really position ourselves in those moments. We have an amazing group of facilitators that are going to facilitate and engage in these conversations with you. We have from the CERC team, we have Michelle LeBron Griffin, Evan McKnight, Stephen Prophet, and Janet Sarkin that are going to facilitate your conversation. But the first thing that you're going to do is going to do that reflection. So begin to take notes for yourself. What are those moments? And please be courageous enough to say it. We need to hear it because it is this moment right now that is going to continue to determine the future of our babies and of our education in general. You have been, and I remember when we established this, when we began to talk, engage in conversations about this collaborative. It was about let's be courageous enough to speak the truth and being able to make change. And through this year, since 2018, you have provided incredible feedback to our colleagues of the State Department of Education, and we have witnessed what they have done with your support for the moments. We are at a moment right now, and we need each other. But we need to know from you, what are those moments in history that you see need to be addressed and that we need to make sure that we collect information about. So what is going to happen next? You are going to be zoom out of this space and zoom in into new space for the magical thing that happens with technology. You are going to be met by the facilitators, and they're going to walk you through the process. They're going to explain you how we're going to capture your moments. And then we're going to zoom you back into the space where we will get engaged in a conversation about those moments. If we can move to the next slide, Greg, thank you. So you are going to be looking at our focus, school discipline, exclusionary practices, all those things, social, emotional, racial, cultural, all those components. Then you're going to be entering that into this amazing platform that the team has set up, and we will come back together. Before we let you go, you will have approximately 25 to 30 minutes to engage in conversations. Please speak your truth, share your perspective, listen to each other's perspectives, and we look forward to having you come back into the space so that we can continue to engage in this moment conversation. I asked you to, if for any reason we experience any technical difficulties, be patient with us because we're working through the magic of the virtual space. For any reason, if you're not zooming out into a space, we will make sure that you join a group. So at this time, I will ask my colleague, Sarah Jones, if we are ready. My colleagues from CERC, are we all set? Fantastic. So we will see you back between 25 minutes and 30 minutes into the large space. You will be joining to a smaller group to engage in the conversation. Thank you so much and looking forward to having you back into the space. Sarah, thank you. Thank you. March 2020, as schools close, switch to virtual learning, mask can hinder relationships and communication. I don't know, all of you, as you were in the space, I'm looking at this and getting some moments of a pause, moments of pause, or what we all have gone through as a nation, as a community, as a state. You can continue, Sarah, scrolling. We can pause right there. May 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, what we all witnessed, and they continue to give us the courage to be able to really dismantle and undo some of those things that if we do not do it ourselves, they will repeat themselves. History. Thank you. Hmm. 2021. The schools getting to realize that this was a way now of providing instruction. We were all thrown into this space, into this moment, and then now beginning to figure out. You can continue. Can you pause right there? Going back to school, unexpected challenges and outcomes. Also, strength and resilience on part of our students, our teachers, our administrators. Then January 6th, it showed us division. It showed us who we are as a nation and some of the things that we need to continue to address. You can continue, Sarah. Thank you. June 2021. I'm hoping that you're noticing the trends of what's happening in here as part of the history, as part of those moments and what is done in order to be able to address those moments and how we're doing it as a community. How are we really paying attention to what's happening? Continue. Thank you. 2022, we began to see some changes, began to say, okay, we're trying to get into some level of normalcy ourselves, but it's still a lot of things that we still need to do. Yes. There's so many things about the behavior, the link, things that are happening as these things are happening to our communities and what our young people, our babies are showing, the conversation that we were having today. So we want to thank you for all that. There is so much that we can do with what you have provided today. And we wanted to pause and create this moment in which we engage in this collective reflection about what does it mean to be in these moments and how the resiliency of who we are allow us to really observe the moment and do something about it. And a lot of the things that we are witnessing today is the result of all these things that we're all experiencing. I'm going to give the floor to our commissioner right now to just provide her perspective on what you have provided and the accomplishments of this group as a collaborative since 2018. Commissioner.
Thank
Sarah,
you,
we can-
Ingrid. John, do you want to do your final thoughts before I take my final thoughts?
Oh, sure. Do you want to take down the slides? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to say a couple things. Our next meeting is November 17th. Please put it on your calendar. We'll send out some more information as we get closer. I did want to recognize Erin Benham. Erin from our State Board of Education. I want to acknowledge her presence and thank you for attending, Erin. And then I will turn it over to you, Commissioner, for some final thoughts. Commissioner.
All right. Thank you all. And for those of you that don't know, I think this has evolved over our collaborative and our time together. Our Erin Benham is our vice chair of our board, so she's got a really pretty important role. And as our goal here is to advise the commissioner and the board, we certainly appreciate her here. She reports out to the full board, just so you know that. And last time she was inviting more of our colleagues on the board to join this meeting. But Ingrid, thank you. And thank you to all of you for continuing to share this information as we are in this space together. So I was doing my own reflection as Ingrid, we started here in 2019 and 2018 when we pulled this collaborative together. And so Ingrid mentioned that I raised my hand as being in the first meeting, but I just want to take a moment just to share behind the meeting when I, decided to, with everything that was happening, the data around us, I was having individual meetings with some of you. I know I was meeting with you, Marissa, just, others at different times. There were just all these issues that were coming to bear, and we were having individual meetings. And I remember thinking about it. We cannot solve these issues individually or in silos, and there was a need for us to come together. And it is out of that need and the fact that we needed to have a Connecticut holistic approach to this work that I went to our commissioner at the time and said, we need to do this together and we need to form a discipline collaborative. And worked on our first meeting together and really just getting us started. And so just know, I'm not in this space because I feel obligated to be here in my role, but because this is something that I truly believe in and was the developer really for a collaborative, which is so critically important. And so I reflected on the work we've done together. We've developed our position statement. We've done, the documents, the family guides, that information and more to come. And really just wanted to thank you for that. I look back to our earliest comprehensive presentation on school discipline to our state board. We're doing another one, by the way, at our upcoming board meeting in a week or so, that you've come to expect, from us on an annual basis. And we did that, leaned in on the data for our youngest learners. And it's out of that in 2015 that some of this work got codified into law. I wanted to put that in so people recognize kind of from whence we've come in this work. And a lot of this together, I was sharing with Mike McKeon, who's our legal director, who's kind of new to the space, that I remember thinking about where are the lawyers or right? Working with our boards and providing guidance and all of that, that we need all of us in this space. Because then and only then I believe we can make real progress. And so I am just so thrilled that here we are years later, that we're still here. And one of our meetings, you know, somebody from California came out to see what we were doing here in the state, working together on school discipline. So really, I just want to thank you. There's still a lot to be done. The issue of the pandemic, what has happened there, and I saw that in the chat, Andy. I mean, all our realities. But it is, I still believe it's all work together that's going to get us where we need to be. So I just want to say how much I value you for being in this space, continuing to allow us to have candid conversation. 2018, our first meeting, Dr. Darren Graves was our keynote speaker. And in that, he talked about the critical work of racial identity development. 2018, and we looked at our own Connecticut data, and he was there talking to us about what all of us have responsibility for, and what do we do in our own sphere of influence, because we all have a critical and important role. And so we really started there, and so here we are today. And you know, just finally, thank you, because our kids deserve all of us working this hard together on their behalf. When we talk about, you know, what we need to see happen in our state. So thank you. For all the work that you're doing and for continuing to be here with us. I'm sure the staff will take everything that you put together and you know, we'll be working on that again. And you know where we are. I continue to say that. You know how to find us. And so your ideas, your thoughts, we're engaging and making sure that we're having conversations with our state agency partners, other commissioners. I bring commissioners into these groups sometimes just to talk about what they're working on and to hear from you. And so we'll find ways to continue to do that. Again, Ingrid, thank you for a great facilitation, and for all of you, thank you very much. Look forward to our continued work together.
Thank you, Commissioner. This brings our meeting to a conclusion. I know that we have another meeting scheduled for November 17. So we look forward to seeing you all then. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you all. It's a great meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
So Evan, are you going to send